until you landed. Now, when you land, you've got to get the thing out. And we couldn't fly over there and drop those all around the field that we were going to land in. It would rather give the game away, wouldn't it, if we put up. So what we did, what you had to do, round the tail were 4 bolts which held the tail on. You had to undo those, and it fell off, and you dragged it to one side. There were a pair of wire cutters there, which you cut the control cables. You just pulled the tail to one side, took these metal troughs, laid them down out the back and drove the Jeep down it, see, and that all sounds simple, doesn't it? But there were lots of sort of snags with it, and the story is that one day they'd done a demonstration for His Majesty the King and Queen with the 2 princesses, and they were standing sort of by one of these ramps watching the lads put the Jeep in the glider, and one of the fellows left his fingers in rather a silly place. And he mentioned this to his friends. Again, your words to that effect. And the story is that the Queen Mother said, well, I suppose they do get frustrated sometimes. The other snag was, it was all very well standing there undoing these bolts and fiddling about to take the nuts off. But I mean, if somebody's taking umbrage to your being there and trying to get rid of you, you don't want to be too long doing that. So somebody came up with the bright suggestion that where the body section and the tail section were joined, if they put a ring of gun cotton round there and a button in the cockpit, as soon as you touched down, if you pushed the button, you could blow the tail off and get the Jeep out without having to stand there undoing all these bolts. Well, that was all right, unless you got some keen type who blew the tail off 10 feet in the air. You rather lost control of the stability of the glider. But anyway, that was how we got the Jeeps on and how we got the Jeeps off. It was a bit of a dicey procedure, but never mind. Now, this is what we were practicing all through the winter, the autumn and the winter of 1943, 1944. Mass landings on other aerodromes in this country. It was all done in this country. And you've seen an aerodrome. I mean, you've got your main runways and you get... So the main runways there, and what you do, we of the glider pilot regiment, we lived on the same aerodrome as our tug squadron, and the exercises would be organised that gliders from one particular aerodrome, say Stony Cross, like the one I was on, would land in that area. Gliders from Briars Norton would land in that area. Gliders from Aldermaston in there, Fairford in there. And all the troops, the airborne troops, would all go off and do their exercise, and tugs from the our parent aerodrome would come at some later time, retrieve the gliders, and we'd go back and get ready for the next exercise. And this is where the differential brakes came useful, because you can see how close some of these gliders are, and if you could steer around them and avoid crashing into them, it was much better for all concerned, really. What used to happen, you see, we used to fly in a long stream at 2,000 feet, tugs and gliders at about 2,000 feet. And when you could see where you were going to land and you could see the landing zone, you'd pick the spot that you were going to land on, and everything would be fine until the last minute when some other clot would sort of get the bit of grass that you wanted, and you had to steer around him. So that's where the differential brakes came in, very useful. But as I say, this is what we were practicing all through the autumn of 1943 and into 1944. Now, one of the beauties of gliders was that you could land troops in concentrated numbers. Now, if you dropped 180 paratroops, you spread them all over the country. It takes ages for them to gather again. And so that's why we used the gliders. But of course, in order to achieve that, you've got to get all the gliders there almost at the same time, which means you've got to get them airborne all at the same time. And this is the way we used to do it. All the gliders were lined up on the runway, all the tugs were lined up each side, and the tow ropes from the tugs were connected to their respective gliders. When time to go arrived, a series of signals were passed from the chap standing by the glider to the tug at the front here, and he would open up his throttles, move off slowly until the tow rope was tight, when the chap at the back would pass the signal forward to where the tug pilot could see it. He'd push open the throttles, away they went, and as soon as that moved, the chap from that side would taxi onto the runway, tow his glider off, then the one like that, and we would go down the line until we'd got all the gliders off, and we could do one about every 30 seconds to 45 seconds. So you can see we could always arrive in a concentrated group when we got there. And so this was the other bit that went towards these operational exercises that we had. Now, one day in April 1944, our squadron commander sent for 6 of us in our squadron, and in another squadron on another aerodrome, 6 chaps were sent for there, and told that we could forget all about this flying at 2,000 feet and being towed and seeing where we were going to land. We were going to do something quite different. We were going to fly up to 6,000 feet. We'd never heard of this, not being towed at 6,000 feet. And we were going to land in a very small field, about half the size of a football pitch. We were going to do it at night, with no lights. He didn't give us a chance to say, would you rather not? And so we started practicing, but there were some snags. And the first thing they said to us was, well, it's no good flying empty gliders. You won't get the feel of them, we won't know whether you'll be able to glide that far and all that. So we better put some weight in the gliders. Now, you've heard of the Bailey Bridge, you know, that prefabricated bridge. So they took some sections of that weighing that were made up a load of 6,000 pounds and put them in the gliders. And we said, well, yeah, that's all right, but if we are doing this at night and for some reason we come unstuck and we stop rather quickly, 6,000 pounds of Bailey Bridge in the back of your neck is not conducive to feeling all right, you see. So we said we don't like that. So they came back another day and said, we've cracked it, we know what we're going to do. We're going to put concrete blocks on the floor, and so that if you stop suddenly and you lift your feet up, they'll all shoot out underneath. So we started off practicing for that, and this is where we had to do with this angle of dangle business. The first tug aircraft we started doing this with was a thing called an Albemarle, which was a twin-engine aircraft. It wasn't much good. The story is we gave some to Russia for lease lend, and all they did was took the engines off and used them and threw the airframe away. But they weren't much good. They couldn't climb very well. And we were trying to get up to 6,000 feet, and there were lovely big puffy clouds all round us, and he tried to get over them and under them and round them, and he couldn't. And so he disappeared into cloud, you see, and I tried to fly on this angle of dangle thing, but it didn't work. So I cast off, and we came out of the cloud, and because what used to happen, we used to fly in the Severn Valley a lot and around that area, and there were aerodromes all over the place, which while you were flying on tow, you could see everything. There was always an aerodrome that you thought, well, if I need to get down, I'll get down on that, you see. But while you were in the cloud, some rotten so-and-so moved all those aerodromes. So when you came out, there weren't any there, and you just had to pick a field and hope for the best. And Peter, my second pilot, and I, we saw this lovely big piece of green. We thought, oh, that's fine, we'll land there. To find we'd landed on a village green somewhere in the Newbury area.